Hi, Commander Runningcloud here with Commander Runningcloud's log for May 30th, 2024. It's a Thursday, somewhere around 9:11, 9:10, somewhere around that time, p.m. And I'm here in Houston, Texas, talking to all of my interdimensional and interplanetary, well, you're not just my friends, you're a part of the Army. I feel funny saying that, but I have to have faith in this system. And between this broadcast and the last broadcast, I did get to see one of the people that I saw when I was in Las Vegas watching interdimensional television programming. I got to see one of the people that I recognized and saw in one dimension with one context, and then somebody turned the channel and I saw him looking a little different in another dimension, in another context. And I actually think this person stood right beside me in a Walmart right here in Houston, Texas, and looked at me, and I looked at him, and he looked very nice. And I didn't know if he was going to try to hit on me or not, but I didn't think he was. But he did look kind. And he looked at me and smiled, and I looked at him, and we were pretty close. Like we were pretty close. He was just right here on the other side of a post. I looked at him. And I'm almost sure it was this person, but like I said, when I see famous people in the wild, in the public, I don't even recognize them because, they just look like a person. They don't look like a star. I don't know what a star is supposed to look like, but I find it hard to recognize them. So when I saw him, I felt that I was getting, a kind of a clear sign that I'm not delusional. I really went through an indoctrination. I really met with other races of people in the human race from other planets. I actually experienced interdimensionality. I actually communicated with time travelers. That everything that happened to me during that indoctrination was real, including a consciousness transfer of my imprint, my psychological imprint, to another person from another planet who serves the same function that I serve in this reality. We were both Silver Rain Runningcloud. She looked really different from me. But, that was while we were on the ship, getting medical care after they kind of knocked me out and brought me to the ship. And then, I spent the time there in the mental hospital. Because that's a really great place to meet interdimensionals. Because when you start seeing interdimensionals, communicating with interdimensionals, it might blow your mind at first. So you might end up drawing attention to yourself, as I did, That was when the little people were evacuating Las Vegas in their little cars. Tons of them. And that was right after we heard about Trump. And I was going to Las Vegas to get my new instructions. But I went through Colorado. And Cortez, Colorado, somebody sold me marijuana that was tainted with a psychedelic drug that didn't really hit me until I reached Las Vegas from Cortez. It wasn't the first time that I got drugged, so I did recognize that somebody slipped me a Mickey. It happens a lot in film noir. You get slipped a Mickey, you know? Well, I'm going to actually take it upon myself to make some commands as a leader of a military unit. And I want you all to understand how uncomfortable I am with issuing commands and how confident I am that my commands are good and right and effective. I'm not one of those people that wants power. I like recognizing other people's talents. So please let me tell you the kind of commander that I am. I'm the kind of commander who says, I think I know what's best to do here. So I hope that everyone will do what I ask you to do. And even if you don't understand what I'm asking you to do, I'm asking you to do it because I have a sound rationale. However, if you have information that might change my ideas or my opinions, please do not be shy. Because as far as I'm concerned, we are all equal. We're not all the same. But God created each one of us and loves each one of us as if we were our only child. And I believe that. I don't believe that. Well, I do believe that I have talents that other people don't have. But I also believe that other people have talents that I don't have. But in this moment, at this time, doing this task, I believe I'm the best man for the job. So I'm going to issue these as commands because we are a military unit. And commands are the way we communicate the next level of the plans. Now, we had been making kind of good gains in stabilizing the advancing of the bioweapons within our bodies. But I'm looking and I'm seeing other members of my team who are affected by this bioweaponry, going through the same kind of physical changes that I'm going through. So if I can see more than one going through this, then we can pretty much bet that our enemy is going to try to get to all of us. And that means this. That means that anyone susceptible to these bioweapons, I'm going to call them muskoids. Okay? I'm going to call them muskoids instead of, Morgellons, because Morgellons was just one step. And once they started deploying the bioweapons and the microfibers, we got into brand new territory. So this is the muskoid disease. And I'm sure that it has affected some of the humans from other planets and other galaxies. So I believe that this infection is endemic. Does endemic mean virulent, infectious, potentially going through everybody? Because that's what I believe. I'm going to do a little recapping that for me, the infection began when some pigeons landed on the roof of my townhouse apartment in Meriden within a week after I sent my letter of resignation to the graduate doctoral program at the University of Massachusetts. Within a week of me emailing to Bill Mobius that I quit, I give up, I quit, you get what you want. The birds appeared at my window. There was a noise in my roof that sounded like scrambling, and within days, I had a very strange sore in the back of my right knee on the calf, on the uppermost calf of my leg. This wound opened like a hole inside of me. And around the hole was a crenulated area, was a firm, rigid circle that seemed to be holding the hole open inside of me. And I thought it was maybe a spider bite because I didn't know what else to think, a wolf spider bite because I didn't know what else to think. And since I had seen a fantastic spider on my bed in Connecticut before I moved to Meriden, I knew that fantastic spiders existed, but there were no trace of any in my room. Just the pigeons that appeared and the noise in the roof, and then the wound. When I went out to the emergency room, it was first a big red bump, and then it kind of opened into this crater with a white rim around it, made of a harder material, almost like cartilaginous, or almost like the shell on a mollusk, the thin shell on a mollusk, but not breakable, more flexible. And I think I actually might have pulled that off, and it might have even, come off all in one piece. It didn't seem organic or natural. It was nothing I'd ever seen before. And my leg hurt me very much. And I don't remember the other physical symptoms, but I'm sure there were some. So I immediately went to the emergency room in a state of fear and terror, and I was treated very dismissively, almost as if they were expecting me, and ready to be derisive towards me. It was kind of weird the way the medical community responded to this strange bite on my leg. Over the course of the development of the preliminary level of the infection, I went to the hospital about 2 or 3 more times. And each time the doctor gave me a prescription for a narcotic, for an OxyContin drug. And even the doctors I knew were starting to use the word delusional parasitosis. Okay? Because shortly after the crenulated wound in my leg, I felt something strange in my ankle. And then one day, I had a vision about a small, square-faced creature that was nesting by the ankle of my leg, by my ankle. And I actually had an interdimensional kind of experience where I could see through my flesh all the way down from the entry wound to this place in my leg where I could see an entity, a square rectangular shaped entity with, arms and a face. And I just kind of chalked it up to some cocaine that I was using. I used cocaine for about a month, I guess, after I dropped out of graduate school, I believe. Not even a month, I don't think. Anyway, I used cocaine. I did. And it was during the use of cocaine that I saw this creature in my leg. So it could have just been a hallucination. But here's the interesting part about it. 2 interesting things. One, Flair Brun said that people that take cocaine are taking in interdimensional parasites. Okay, and I did use cocaine, not for long, really, not for long. It didn't do anything for me. I was just trying to catch up with the party life that I had been leaving behind, and my boyfriend was a DJ, and he got some, and it was just something I did a couple of times because I never did it. Well, I did it once or twice when I was younger, but it didn't do anything for me. So I didn't keep up with it. It wasn't fun for me. It was just something that kind of drove me to do it until it was gone. And I didn't even notice a change in my personality or my or my mood or anything. Some people said, oh, I feel so good. I feel so, and I'd be like, oh, it was like vodka. It just didn't do much for me. But I felt like I was trying to catch up, that I'd missed parties and I'd missed fun, and I just wanted to catch up. You can see how guilty I feel about it. Being a bad girl like that, I feel really guilty. But I did do it. And that I have to tell you that because it might have had an impact on what happened to me. But here's the other interesting thing. One is Flair Boone said if you did cocaine, you probably took something in. Okay, and I did do cocaine around this time in the mid 2000s, after 2004. So the other thing was that I saw a picture once of a creature that was invading people, an interdimensional parasite, and it looked a lot like the thing I saw inside my ankle after this entry point in my leg. But let me stress that these are interdimensional. So when I was actually able to see through my leg, it was as if my leg was a corridor, sort of, and I could see the thing living there. And this is the leg that gets the thumping in it. This is the leg where the initial entry was made, and a subsequent entry after that was made. And this is the side of my body that is most visibly affected by the disease. And this is the side of my body where the nanobot that Marcus Smith put in my room on my bed entered into my ear. So the right side of my body has been mostly targeted, but the left side of my body has not been as obvious in revealing the symptoms. And the disease process has been different on the left side of my body, but it has also moved forward, putting entities in my teeth, compromising my teeth, moving, to the other teeth that were capped and given root canals and capped to implant time-released, frequency-released entities. But the left side of my body has been affected more slowly than the right side of my body. So I may have seen I'm going to call it the resident parasite, the parasite that is like the CPU of the system, that was first inserted in my leg in about 2004 after I left the University of Massachusetts and became useless to the society in terms of free labor. The last doctor I went to at Hartford Hospital emergency room actually refused to enter the room that I was in because he said, you are probably contagious. He said, I think you have scabies. And I had already heard that, because by now I'm starting to see little bumps rising in my skin, and I'm starting to itch, and I'm starting to be able to remove black things that were emerging from my skin. And I was doing a Lyme disease protocol. And I was doing cleanses, using adapted protocols from Hulda Clark. And most importantly, I was talking to Dr. Staninger, who had done the research on the veterans suffering from exposure to Agent Orange, because a lot of her research was intersecting with my symptoms. And that was when I first realized that it was, I realized that it was bioweaponry, and that it had been in development and been tested on American military and debuted as Agent Orange. So I actually talked to Dr. Staninger on the telephone. I shared some of my data with her. I got her recommendations. So I jumped on it immediately. But the symptoms were still disturbing enough to send me to the emergency room about 3 times. I also went to see an infectious diseases, exotic special diseases specialist at Yale University who took a biopsy from my stomach. I also went to visit a dermatologist named Dombrowski in Rochester, New York, who actually took a biopsy from the middle of my arm and treated me with incredible contempt when I tried to explain to him that I have been infected with Morgellons. Because the medical community at all their conferences and their updates, they were being taught that any people that come in with itching, eruptions in their skin, and I forget what the other symptoms were. Just the symptoms when you know that something has invaded your consciousness. So Dr. Dombrowski treated me with a great deal of contempt and cut a hole right in the middle of my arm. It's faded finally, but he did his biopsy right in the middle of my arm. And I thought that was just plain mean and cruel. Both Dombrowski and the Yale exotic diseases specialist said they saw something, but it was unspecified. So they didn't say, I don't see anything. That's just normal skin and flesh. That's just normal tissue. They both said, I see something, but it's unspecified. They didn't know what they were looking at. Now, in the meantime, I'm also doing research and finding a lot of good information on YouTube about Morgellons protocols that patients were finding for themselves. And also there was a Morgellons website or two where you could get information. And one guy in particular would tell you how to take a bath with green palm olive and some other stuff. And that worked very well too. So I was very aggressive about fighting the Morgellons. And over time, let's see, I must have gone to see the dermatologist in 2007 or 6 or 7. So I dealt with it for about 3 years. Oh, it changed the quality of my hair. Hair started growing places where it didn't grow before, like out of my legs and arms. Because I'm more of an Indian, I don't grow a lot of body hair. Except on my head. So I noticed when this started to happen. And then I found that, hair is one of the ways that this disease expresses itself, that the fibers will appear to be hair. There was also one time when I woke up and my face felt like it was made out of plastic. When I felt my face, it actually seemed malleable, as if it were made out of some kind of a silicone or something. And that was really scary because it made me wonder, am I an interdimensional creature? Am I really real? What's happening here? So it had a whole psychospiritual aspect to it. This Morgellons disease, it was actually not just taking over your body and redesigning parts of your body, but it was infiltrating you psychologically and emotionally too, or maybe spiritually, I don't know. So it was years later that I was getting this biopsy. And then the disease went into dormancy. I don't remember it really bothering me. I don't remember it making me aware of itself. And I guess I just pretty much forgot about it until Marcus Smith put the nanobot that worked its way into my ear, into my body. And that seemed to activate an entire system that seemed to be using a neural pathway that the Morgellons disease created. Because when I affected the creature in my ear, I could feel it in my leg where I had seen they're saying it's an archon. They're saying it's an archon that was in my leg. They're telling me it was an archon infection. I hope I got that right. Because, I don't trust mental telepathy. Okay? So when this creature went into my ear and I'm trying to kill it, I could feel it migrating around the back of my head, past my pineal gland, all the way over here. Okay? Now, yesterday I looked at this ear and I can see little tendrils as if there are tiny worms under the skin there. And I don't know if that's true or not, but about a week ago, my ears were perfectly fine. And then they launched a bunch of Starlink satellites and my ears started to bother me again. So my feeling is that the initial infrastructure in my body was created when the Morgellons Archon dived and burrowed its way into my leg to settle at my ankle. And it would also cause my toe on this foot to tingle. And sometimes I would get pressure in my toe and be able to remove a small piece of crystal, like a piece of glass, from the middle of my toe. And once I went to a podiatrist and she actually put a little medicine on that part of my toe, and she said it was some kind of glandular expression. But once the ear mite condition was put under control and I started taking ivermectin, the connection to my toe decreased very much. I haven't felt a crystal grow in my toe for quite some time now. But that was something that started after I moved here, after I started living here. Now, I was infected in October. The middle of October is when Marcus Smith put the nanoworm on my bed to crawl into my ear. And my first sensation, as well as I can remember, was as if there was a spider there, which reminded me of the Archon in my leg because it had spider legs, mechanical spider legs on it. And this felt mechanical because I could hear the clinging. I could hear clinging and clanging when it moved. And I could feel it just taking over my ear. It went into my ear and then it started burrowing its way through the curve of my ear, the outer curve of my ear, and then into my skull to meet this pathway and go on to this side. And I could feel it moving. I could even feel the segments of its body underneath my own flesh. So it took me a very long time to kill it. I had to deal with a great deal of pain. I blocked a lot of that out of my mind now because I tried everything. And ultimately, if I looked into my ear, I was actually able to see the organism hiding and poking out. And it looked like a white sheet. It looked like a white membrane. And it was actually visible in my ear if I used a mirror and a flashlight. In the very earliest stages, I was able to crush it. I was able to endure the pain of crushing it because at the head of it, it had a piece of metal. It wasn't flesh. It wasn't bone. It was actually metal. And I was able to crush this metal so much that it could not travel through the canal in my ear. And when I disabled it completely, it drew back like this and stabbed me in my head so loud that I screamed. And at that point, I got a very distinct feeling that somebody upstairs was operating a joystick to control the nanobot. And it was guiding the nanobot using a camera system, using maps of my body, using what the Morgellons pathways would have been, that it was actually guiding this thing through my ear. Because this attack, this revenge, it had human emotion in it when it attacked me. It wasn't just a bug fighting me. It was something saying, you just destroyed the machine. So I looked it up online. I used Google's BARD, artificial intelligence research tool. to ask specific questions that, can there be a nanobot that can get into your ear? Can this nanobot be directed through the human body using a joystick? I mean, I asked very specific questions, and I found that DARPA had patents on a lot of the things that I was asking, that a lot of the things that I was reverse engineering from the sensations I was getting in my ear were actually things that were created and covered by DARPA and Weiss, W-Y-S, of Harvard Institution technology, patented technology. And I already knew about Charles Lieber and his biochemical nanobots. Okay, so I really started to theorize that Morgellons was where they created the infrastructure that actually created the organism, which I began to describe. It's as if someone inserted a balloon profile of my body underneath my flesh, and they occupy this balloon, and they can travel through this balloon, and they can go from my ears to my feet. Right? Now, before I was infected by Marcus, I started using an intelligent cupping device. And when I'd use this intelligent cupping device, I noticed that the sensations I was feeling using this were actually pulling pain from my body, but not my physical body, the body beyond my body. And I started to theorize that the reason why they call this an intelligent cupping device is because it is capable of removing interdimensional diseases. Because I used it on my back, and I was able to straighten part of my spine that had been damaged by the Arizona State Police torture of me, Arizona State Trooper torture of me. And I was able to also remove other pains that were attached to the emotional memories of who inflicted that pain on me. And that was when I thought, wow, this is really an interdimensional health machine, therapeutic machine. Because every time I'm using it, I'm getting the feeling that it's not just dealing with my physical body, but it's dealing with, I don't know, Dr. Virtual 7 just did a release talking about the electromagnetic body. So I'm just going to call it that. But in the course of doing this, there were parts, especially on the left side of my body, where a blister would occur with just a clear fluid in it. No blood, a clear fluid, which was weird and strange. And that was when I started to feel that the Morgellons had created perhaps a silicone level, a silicone layer, and that this machine was actually extracting some of this substance out of my body. Because after it extracted that, then the blisters would start to fill with my real blood. Now, one thing that I had noticed after Morgellons struck me is that I didn't bleed. If I got cut, I didn't bleed. And I think that's because they inserted a layer, an artificial biolayer, which some Morgellons people called a biofilm, in fact. And I remembered that too. I said, oh, wow, this must be the biofilm. So before the nanobot was even deployed upon me, I was removing the structure that Morgellons had put inside my body. And I was removing pain and damage caused by emotional trauma in my body. Sometimes when I was releasing pain, I would actually release the memory. And that reminded me of what my cousin Joyce Gaines told me. Joyce Gaines was one of Uncle ZD's children, and Uncle ZD was one of my grandmother's brothers. And Joyce was into healing and spirituality, and she said, your body holds emotional memories that cause sickness and pain. So it's very important that you do emotional hygiene to keep yourself clear of traumatic memories as much as you can, because they cause diseases. And I remembered what my cousin Joyce said as I'm using this machine, and it's lifting pains that I've had for years that were associated with emotional trauma. And some of the traumas I actually knew how I had gotten that hurt, but to actually feel the pain removed let me know that I was holding that pain as a way of retaining a memory, and that I could release that pain by releasing the memory, by forgiving the offender, by releasing the memory. And about that time, I started hearing a little bit from Joe Dispenza, and he's talking about how you can walk out of disease. Now, I don't advise anybody to do Joe Dispenza's pineal gland cracking exercises of forcing your cerebral fluid to crack open your pineal gland, if you can even do it. I mean, I tried it a couple of times. I couldn't do it. But I probably just had a barrier to doing it built in, because it sounds very dangerous to me. It seems to me that if my pineal gland wants to open, it should open by itself. That if I have to force it open, then I'm going to damage myself, hurt myself. So while I enjoyed what Joe Dispenza had to say about the emotional value of physical pain and disease, and how it harmonized with what my cousin Joyce Gaines had taught me about it, and how all of that seemed to be harmonized with my actual experience, that I'm reverse engineering. Hey, this feels like this is happening. This feels like that is happening. And then I go through the things that I've been taught about it, and I say, oh, convergence. Okay. So I think that the intelligent cupping device is one good way that I was disrupting the infrastructure of the Morgellons, which has made it a lot harder for the disease to work its way through me. Just like when I first got the Morgellons, I immediately responded and disrupted the technology, but not enough to totally stop it, just enough to disrupt it. So it wasn't able to advance on me as much as it advanced on other targeted individuals that had been infected with the preliminary stages of this bioweapon that started as Agent Orange under the study of Hildegard Staninger. She was so helpful, mostly because she believed me. But at the University of Oklahoma, a professor there started to believe Morgellon sufferers too, and start to examine their evidence of fibers being extracted from their bodies. Fibers that look a lot like these Morgellon fibers that I find around here in different stages of development. But I'm pretty sure those are not coming from my body, because I'm pretty sure I would feel them coming out of me. I'm very sensitive to my body. I think I know that. But this ear, whenever I touched it in the first stages of the nanobot infection, it would hurt. If I tried to remove it, it would hurt me instead of me hurting it. So it refracted all the pain that I inflicted on it. It refracted it to me. And all that pain was from trying to remove it. Remove something I could see in my ear, something I could feel in my ear, something I could watch moving through my ear, something alive, something that wanted revenge when I destroyed it, something that would hide and disappear sometimes. Sometimes I would be looking for it and I couldn't detect it. I couldn't feel it because it wasn't there. It was gone, but then it would be back. And that's when I knew it was interdimensional. I also realized or started to suspect that it had, and also from things I learned from the Morgellons people, the early people that got Morgellons, who actually published their research and the cures they were finding, they mentioned magnets. When I put a magnet near my right ear, it made the creature so angry that it attacked me and hurt me. It grew little hairs all around my ear. It grew hairs. And these hairs were sensory devices. And I pulled all the hairs out as a part of deactivating its power. And it would get angry. It was filling up, the curves inside your ear. I've noticed most everybody has a different ear. You could probably do ear prints, is what I'm sort of getting the feeling of, because I've seen so much diversity in the way people's ears grow. I've seen diversity in this. But I could feel it occupying parts of my ear. I could see it. If I put salt on it, it would burn where the creature was, but it burned me as well as the creature. It didn't just burn the creature that was expanding and growing and migrating from my ear from the nanobot worm. That Marcus, it was a brown thing that started because when I didn't show any symptoms, I was so aggressively fighting it, and I had so many good tools for keeping it at bay, that when Marcus and Kedra didn't see me totally disabled and running out to the hospital emergency room for help, they started to think that they had not successfully infected me. So Kedra made a plan to come into my room on the pretenses that she wanted to do some copywriting in my little organization in exchange for some goods. And she left one of those worms right here, and I was able to see it. And it was about this long. It had 3 legs, 2 sets of 3 legs just in the front of it, and a blunt-edged head. Now, I wasn't sure that was real, and it seemed sort of rubberish. It seemed sort of like a rubber thing. And I wasn't absolutely positive that was the nanobot, but I also knew that it was. And I kept it over here on my lamp. But then I started to fear that it would become activated, and I didn't know what its power would be. And I just was in such a state of denial that I just threw it out. I wasn't going to keep any specimens from it. I just wasn't going to keep any weapons here. But I did see it. And I just described it to you. It had 3 little nubs for legs on each side of the front part of the body. It had a segmented body. It was about this long, an inch. And it almost seemed like it was made of rubber. But the one that she put here was a dud. I think it wasn't even alive. But then she was trying to check to see if she had really done it. She was kind of looking for it when she was in my room and sitting here. And that's when I knew for a fact that they thought that the first weapon didn't take place because I wasn't showing any signs of being infected by a terrifying bioweapon that would be causing me a great deal of, physical pain. I gave no sign whatsoever. So they decided to send the wife in to deploy a second round. So when I would try to put salt on it, the salt would burn the creature, but it would burn me too. It would actually scar up my ear where it was living. Not any other part of my body did not react, but where the creature was living and reproducing and planning, it actually burned. When I put a magnet near it, it got agitated and angry, emotional. It got emotional. But despite everything I tried to do to disable it, I could still feel it. And even though the CPU didn't get through the metal part because I crushed it so it couldn't fit through the opening, somehow the disease was able to progress. It was able to infect my other ear, but not with a creepy, crawly nanobot, just with fat, white blobs was the nature of the infection. They seemed to be fat, white blobs. In fact, at one point I put some kind of killing agent, some kind of killer cream in my ear, and actually did a suction cup with a device that I had. that I got with a healing bracelet. And I actually pushed that in my ear, and I was able to suction out a big glob of white, and I felt much better. So I've been able to affect this ear infection, but I have not been able to wipe it out. At different points in time, as the disease moved into my teeth, from my ears into my teeth, now I feel a lot of discomfort in my throat. So if you know biology, you know that the eustachian tube attaches directly to the throat. The eustachian tube goes through the back of your throat. And I was just able to notice that somehow my teeth were being disturbed. My teeth were hurting. I could feel pressure in my teeth. And when I took a needle and started to clean between my teeth, I found that these teeth are hollow. These teeth are hollow, except for the pseudopods of an organism that lives in my face. I could feel it thumping sometimes in my cheek, thumping under my eye through the course of this disease as it has infiltrated more and more of my body. But when I poked the needle into my tooth, in between my teeth are caverns. And if I poke the flesh there, it'll withdraw. It'll go up into my head. It is responsive. It was creating connections that I could break. I could just snap them apart for the food distribution. Because one of the first ways I noticed it and realized it was intelligent was that it was fighting for my food. I'd have food between my teeth, and I'd be trying to take the food out, and something would be pulling the food in from my teeth. I know it sounds unbelievable. I know it sounds terrifying. I know it sounds horror show, but hey, I live with that. Okay? It was just as horrifying to me. I mean, a creature in your ear, I thought it was a spider. I just knew I'd be able to kill it. And I knew that Marcus had put it in here, but how did I know that the American military, in coordination with the Ivy League research institutes, had used military science to create an organism that's invasive to the human body, that can be activated, that can be controlled by a joystick holding soldier in another room? And that if you put a magnet to your ear, you will interfere with their communications, and they'll get mad about it. Because the electromagnetic wave I created interfered with the communication between the joystick holder and the nanobot in my ear. But after a certain point, the process became automatic, I suppose. And after the Starlink satellites were deployed, I didn't even need to be hit by activators, by the soldiers out there. They didn't even need to hit me with the activators. They didn't even need to burn my eyes, because they can just send rays in here. They can just send gases in here. They can just activate frequencies in my room. Because at the same time that I'm dealing with the nanobots in my ear, I'm dealing with nights where I am being cooked. I can feel the microwave radiation coming in. I had to block my windows with styrofoam to block the rays. They were sending so many rays into this room that sometimes condensation would form on my window and my window alone. It didn't form on the window next door, just on my window, because they were cooking me inside this room so good that I was steaming up the room. Now, they don't do that anymore, but I saw them next door with a huge amount of condensation on their window. So I don't know who they are next door. They seem to change a lot. They seem to be related to the military. I thought they weren't related to anybody, but then I see them talking familiarly with Marcus and other people that seem to be in the military that's running this concentration camp. and bioweapons testing facility. So removing the hairs that this thing created, it would grow new hairs every day. Every day I had to pull the hairs out, and it hurt because it was designed to hurt me as much as I hurt it. And it probably doesn't feel any pain. So it was designed to reflect and activate my pain sensors as a way to protect itself. That if I knew I had to go in there and disrupt this thing and remove this thing and pluck pieces of this thing out of my ear, I knew I was going to hurt myself. So it's designed, you don't want to hurt yourself. So in order to actually remove the organisms, if you know you're going to have to hurt yourself, if you know you're actually going to have to commit to a surgery on yourself with no anesthetic, no knockout. At that time, I didn't even take ibuprofen, but I do now because it hurts so much in my mouth, as the organism in my teeth that was kind of dormant. It was kind of dormant a week and a half ago. They weren't even fighting me for food, not on this side. And I was doing my own dentistry because I found that if I could block their access to air and food, it could calm them down. But they actually were able to use some kind of chemical reaction to undo the fillings that I was putting into my own teeth. And if you do put fillings into your own teeth, be very careful which tooth filling over-the-counter product you buy, because one of them has an aluminum-based product in it. And aluminum is a poison. And I accidentally bought one, and it's just sitting here because there's no way I'm going to use it. But there's another one that's a little more expensive that worked very well in keeping this tooth. Because within weeks of this organism being in my ear, it moved into this tooth. A CPU moved into this tooth and busted this tooth open. This tooth is 2-3 times the size. And now I've repaired it so many times that it's almost cracked all the way up to the root. But I don't feel any pain inside any of these teeth as I clean them and break their feeding supply chain, because they've already substituted my flesh and my nerves for their organism. Okay? So I figured, from the thumping in my legs when I disrupt them, I figure, oh, this organism gets nutrition that feeds the biofilm. It feeds the biofilm from the food in your own mouth. And the dentists that did the root canals and the caps on my teeth, they actually put time-release bioweapons into my mouth. And when I remember the look on Edmund Eves' face as he poked his initials in the back of these two front teeth, which I was able to see on an electronic microscope at Richard Feinberg's office, where he sabotaged this tooth that created an entire disrupted colony of bioweapons on that side of my mouth. You see, because the ones who are advanced in dentistry, and both of these men were, one was an association leader, they know the long-term plan. They know about the bioweapons. They know that when they're putting these custom-made caps into your mouth, that they're actually infecting your teeth. When Dr. Eves put the Invisaligns on, he knew he was creating hairline cracks in my teeth that would later lead to profits for him if I had to have all my teeth pulled. And perhaps he even knew that a parasitic, opportunistic organism would be living in my face and head and feeding off of the food that gets stuck between my teeth. Well, I played some frequencies that actually tightened my teeth up, and that helped a little bit. But there's no way that there's anything I can do, because the disease has actually eaten the dentin out of my teeth, leaving an enamel shell that they fill with the organism. It's where it lives. And if I think about it, that, oh wow, you know, I would probably have to get all my teeth pulled, the organism would still be living in my gums. So they could put implants in my teeth with metal that acts as extended antennas. They could put implants in my teeth. It does a number of things because they created an entire chain of dental care companies that do nothing but implants. The dentists there are only trained to do implants. So the implant industry was planned, and sabotaging people's teeth in their youth so that they would end up needing implants was also planned so they can extend the life of the industry for the stockholders and investors that only profit if you have bad health. And I thought that was all there was to it until I really put the puzzle pieces together and realized that the nanobot in my ear depends upon the infrastructure from Morgellons disease. And the nanobot in my ear activated a process that began to activate organisms that had moved into my teeth where it had already eaten my teeth. I don't know how my teeth are staying in my head. I really don't. I think one reason this one wants to fall out is because I've done so much to disrupt it. But when they first started moving into my gums, I was actually able to use needles to disrupt them. And then they would sort of explode out of my teeth as a big blood glob from me disrupting them and pressuring them and killing them. And they would explode from out of my teeth. And I'd feel just a big explosion of blood. But it wouldn't be flowing blood. It would be a blood clot. And I found that all these blood clots were virtually consistent, that they were blood clots. But the blood clot here, it would start to flow out and then it would just suck itself back in. It would start to flow out. It would just suck itself back in. It took me a very long time to get anything out of this tooth, this eye tooth, where it had established its headquarters after invading my ear. And then if I disrupt the teeth, I can feel it tingling in my leg where the archon was planted. At this point, I'm getting bony growths underneath my caps of my teeth. I'm getting bony growths, but they just don't always seem to be there. They seem to be able to move in and out of this dimension because when I try to disrupt them, I can't find them with my pins. They're gone. But then I can feel them with my tongue. I can feel them with my finger. I can feel them when they were gone. They disappeared and then they came back. So that's why I'm sure that there's an interdimensional intelligence behind this, almost to the point where I wonder if in other dimensions, can you actually see the creature living on my shoulder and extending itself into my body and feeding off of me? Because it seems to be bigger than me, yet intersecting with me and my body. And it is most definitely intelligent. It evades destruction. It spreads itself. It gets revenge. It communicates with other parts of my body. And it's extractable. Once I pulled the organism out, my teeth felt way, way better. But then another one would just show up and another one would show up and another one would show up. And it's been months now. It was months that I was removing these organisms from my teeth, and then it stopped. It stopped because it built a rubberized barrier between itself and my attempts to route them out. That when I poke, it simply works like elastic. It simply bends with me. And if I actually want to pierce that membrane, it's almost impossible. But they're still living there. It's just that they adapted to create a rubberized membrane between their little soft blood clot bodies and my surgical instruments. So they are protected in my face. And then I noticed a connection between this burn, this chemical burn that Marcus gave me. I bought some hemp from him for the very last time in December. And he got an attitude because I was saying, can't you get me some real marijuana instead of this hemp? I smelled marijuana, real marijuana around here sometime. And I want, real marijuana. I don't want this stinky hemp. And Marcus got kind of angry at me. So he took hemp and he put it in a California marijuana bag. And he said that he had gone to California, that some of his crew went to California and brought it back. But it was the same old hemp. So I told him, I said, it's the same old hemp, Marcus. You just put it in a different bag. So he said, okay, I've got something for you. And he brought me a little bag of hemp. And I touched it. And I saw that it was the same as the rest. And within minutes, my skin started to hurt. And within minutes, it started to actually melt off my face. I have an early picture or two. I didn't keep a lot of pictures, but you could actually see this cut melting. You can see it's a 3rd-degree chemical burn. And it started just melting into my face. And I remembered that he had an emblem on his car of Batman. And I looked at this and I said, oh my God, they call him Batman because he uses a chemical weapon that burns a smile into people's faces, like the Joker. This is how the Joker's chemical burn looked. It was up in a little smile. Well, I was able to stop the burning from getting any further using, the cures I knew about for chemical burns, like silver. And I don't know what else I used. I can't remember. But this thing will also grow hairs very rapidly as it has a life inside of it. Because you'll see how it lines up to the tooth, to the wacky tooth that they infected. Well, when my gums are acting up, it seems to be adding to the pain inside my mouth. And then in March, now this whole thing started in October, but in March I was outside, in early March, the beginning of March, and I was doing my broadcast outside. And some soldiers appeared outside the door there watching me. And when I left them, I actually had a scar right here where you could touch it and feel little things moving. And it started to draw this down because I had it arrested at just the Joker smile. But then they hit me with the second level of weapons in my face right here when I was outside. And that started to deteriorate my flesh right here. And then it spread to this side and started acting on this side. But it slowed down a great deal now. And I know in other broadcasts I said I think it's the good ETs that have contributed to that fact that it slowed down. But it still exists. It still progresses. I use beauty cream to try to improve the scarring, and I use Mederma to try to reduce the scarring. But when it's activated, it's actually feeding here. Okay, it's actually continuing to eat my flesh, continuing to take the collagen out of my skin to cause drooping and deformation of my chin and mouth. And all of these systems are interrelated from my right leg, that's even hurting right now, all the way to the top of my head. Because one of the things I noticed when I was just attacking the earworm, the ear nanobot, was that when I disrupted it, I could feel my crown chakra vibrating as if it was coming in through my chakra system. And that when I was scaring it away, it was running out through my chakra system and leaving my dimensional body through my chakra system. That was the definite impression that I got. And I'll still feel almost like a band being contracted and expanded in a head that I don't have, in a mind that I don't have in this body. One that's superimposed or insulated within myself. A little bit of both. And because it's a little bit of insulation and superimposed, that's why I think that it's an interdimensional creature that's bigger than me, that can be seen in certain dimensions as actually living on my body and preying on me, actually having its organisms eating from my teeth, actually making entrances and exits through my crown chakra, actually living or having control units in my legs, living in my shoulders, living in my back, living in my digestive system, my urinary tract. Magnesium oxide is something I use to make sure that there are no organisms living inside of me. You know, Krista Reza was so obsessed with worms in your body, and I thought it was so disgusting. I didn't even want to think about it. But then I realized that I have a parasite in my ear, but the rest of my body is affected. So I did a protocol involving magnesium oxide, and I take it pretty regularly. I haven't taken it in a few days, but I'm going to take it today. You know, I guess that there was a time, and I actually have it in my log here, where I wasn't feeling any effects, and I was really feeling that I was being healed. But around the time that I was reading that the Starlinks were being launched, I started to feel a rejuvenation of the disease, that the disease vectors were being reactivated with extra strength, that I was having to take painkillers, that I could feel it moving forward to the front of my teeth, to the front teeth from the back teeth, that this cap that had not been activated yet is starting to be activated. And I have to use a fungal killing laser device and a red light therapy pen to calm them down. But I can't stop them. So, as a part of the Exopolitical Diplomacy Command, I am asking that a medical team be ready to wipe this disease out of our bodies before we become even more incapacitated, before we lose our teeth and have to get implants that are going to be compromised, you can bet. Because they've planned for people to get implants, and they've planned for bioweapons. So you can pretty much bet that the implanted teeth are going to be a new level of weapon. Why wouldn't you do it that way? If you were going to create a creature that goes in people's ears, enters a biosystem that has been dormant for 20 years, and enters a person's ears and then connects an entire organistic system, don't you think that if the idea is to infect your teeth and take over your teeth so badly that any dentist would say, well, we're going to have to pull them? See, I don't want to lose my teeth. God promised me when I was 12 that I would not lose my teeth. And I would just hate to think I imagined God's promise to me. So I was thinking that I have to actually know the good ETs and be in a healing program with them before I lose this tooth. So I keep repairing this tooth. But the crack in this tooth is almost up to my gum line now. Because what I repair it with, the organism is able to eat it away. And what I repaired this side with, well, the organism is building bony structures, new teeth or something, brown teeth. I think it actually mimics creation of parts of your body. Just like when I felt my face felt like silicone. I think that part of the intelligence of this organism is it can mimic your body. It can reproduce your physical body one unit at a time. And the teeth are probably one of the hardest things to reproduce. And that's probably why they're doing these bioweapon tests on my head and my teeth and my mouth. So I'm thinking that between the time travelers and the advanced civilizations and my medical research that I've been sharing with you and that I'm sharing with you now, I'm hoping that you can come up with the cure and deploy the cure on us. Give us the cure, me and my people that you can see are infected. We're suffering pain, and we could really use a cure right now. That even if we're not going to become a part of Star Trek or time travel today, these bioweapons are still eating away at us. They are still attacking us. They are still active inside of us. And between the 5G that's all around and those super 20-foot, 30-foot tall lights that are right outside the hotel on the highway, and the Starlink deployments that have been done over the past couple of weeks, between all of those things, I think we are in a new intensity of attack. And I do believe that these bioweapons are intended to attack the nations that wish to be free of European nationalist racism, of Nazi control of their assets, of European corporate and of foreign investors that do not have the best interest of the people. They're not trying to make that their home. They're making it their poaching place, their hunting garden. So I'm asking the medical team to do whatever it takes. You know, if it takes years to find the cure, but you can time travel it back to us, I would really appreciate you doing that. And I would really appreciate you compromising the Starlink system, getting a hold of all of their software and their schematics, and reprogramming them. If they are built for malicious action, perhaps they can be reprogrammed to reverse the diseases and release the cure. So I'm hoping that we can take the weapons that the enemy has created and turn them into assets that can heal us and cure us from the diseases that they're inflicting on us and the disease that they're planning to inflict in their touchless war for the assets and minds and wealth of all the people of Earth. So that's Commander Runningcloud's log for today. It is a command for medical action. And thank you so much. I look forward to seeing what you can do for us.